My name's Myles Dyer. As of May this year, I would have been on YouTube for 10 years, which is quite a scary thought because it all started with me when I was living with my parents. I saw BBC News and there was a story about an 80-year-old man who had just uploaded this video to this video sharing website. His name was Peter Oakley, and he just gave an introduction saying, "Hi, my name's Peter. It'd be lovely to have some conversations. Does anyone want to talk?" And it got millions of views, and I was curious, so I went online. I went on this website called YouTube, and it wasn't just his video that I found interesting. It was actually the fact that underneath the video there were video responses. People all over the world had uploaded their own videos introducing who they were, doing their own introductions, and I thought I'd do one myself, and so I did. In 24 hours I may have had like 10 views. I had one or two people saying, "Cool, I like what you had to say," and I kind of took it from there. And something I've always thought is that progress is something you only notice when you look over your shoulder. Over the last 10 years it's been a hell of a roller coaster where I've gradually learned the power of YouTube and online community. I've tested the waters in many ways, from charity to government to mental health, and these are things that I'll take you through today. And I realise that we live in very interesting times where there is a real opportunity to create a networked, global, empathetic society where we can really make the world a better place. And so I could go through best practices of YouTube, but instead I thought today I would just take you through a journey of what I've learned the past 10 years when you use the platform and how it's led me to design other projects. So firstly, if you want any of my social media contact details on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Myles. I'll put this up again at the end after. I'm always up for having conversations after today. I'll just step back so you can all see. So these are the 6 areas I'm going to talk you through before then going on to another project called the Universal Solutions Project. These are just 6 examples of experiences I've had over the last 10 years with YouTube, which has really made me realise the way the platform can be used in many different ways. So to start with, charity. Back in 2006, I wasn't just a YouTube video blogger. I used a live streaming website called StickAid.com, and it was where you could live stream yourself from your bedroom. Friends of yours could get on camera, up to 6 slots, and there was a chat room, and you could just have conversations and do your own sort of video, radio shows, etc. And one day I just randomly spoke out to my YouTube audience, and I said, I'm going to stay awake for 24 hours. I'm going to see how it goes, and if you want to donate money, it could be a little fundraiser, and it can go to UNICEF. And so I did that, stayed awake for 24 hours. It was a really boring show. It was just literally me trying to stay awake. And we had 30,000 views, and it raised $900. And it wasn't anything official with UNICEF. It was just saying I donated afterwards to them. And it was really inspiring because over the 24 hours I had friends and family tuning in at different times, and I decided this was something I wanted to do year on year. So over the 5 years, it took us to StickAid 2011. It was done in a TV studio, Ravensbourne University, just opposite the O2. It did 1.5 million views. It raised $35,000. UNICEF were much more involved with it. We had people like Jonathan Ross and Stephen Fry tuning in and donating, and it was just really inspiring to basically engage with an online community, and it didn't matter where people were in the world. They were able to have a say and get involved in a great campaign to help children in the world that don't have a voice and don't have the necessities of life and need the support. And that's just the image there. So what made this charity model successful in my view? There's a few reasons for this. Firstly, that it was a global cause. When the internet was in its early stages, it's still quite localised where people look at local causes. I mean, if this was an event that I'd set up to raise money for a local hospital, quite a few people would probably around the world just not donate because it's not in their community. They would say, I'll just donate to my local one instead. And so UNICEF was something that people all over the world could get on board with. They all understand the plight for many children in the world that don't have a voice, as I've said. They don't have internet connection, they don't have the necessities of life, and so it was something everyone could buy into. Participants don't need to compromise. So there's a few examples here from musicians. We had my friends in Sorted Food who are chefs. We had a guy who designed robots for Robot Wars. My friend Charlie McDonald, who was a big YouTuber. And then we had like other companies like a company that designed cushions. And we had a live streaming site called VU who also got involved. And it was the fact that it didn't matter what people do in life, that they could still play a part, they could do what they enjoy in the context of a live stream, they could do YouTube videos beforehand promoting what they were going to do, and they could bring their audiences on board, and we had this like centralized event for 24 hours. Time and money. So the fact it was a 24-hour event meant that it didn't matter where you were in the world, you had no excuse, in my opinion, not to tune in at some point. So I had some friends in like New Jersey in the US going, oh, I'm not on your time zone, I'm probably not going to get to watch it. But I was like, no, it's 24 hours, there's going to be something convenient, 5 minutes, whether it's on your mobile phone or on your laptop. So it worked there. The second aspect is money. This was an event that could be watched by people geographically isolated all over the world. Some people might have $1, some people might have €1, really small amounts of money. But actually, being an event like this, it meant that no matter where you were in the world, no matter what currency you had, you could donate it, and you could actually see this collectivism of everyone playing a part, and it was really quite inspiring to see. And as I've mentioned, geographical isolation is irrelevant. I should probably put a caveat with that, as long as you have the internet, which is still not a luxury everyone has. But an example I want to give is this, which was in 2011, I think it was the tsunami disaster in Japan. And I always found this really interesting because it showed you how online video creates a window for global empathy, because these were people that were just living their lives. This natural disaster occurred, and there were people just filming it on their phones and uploading it online. And then you had people all over the world seeing this going, that could have been me. You could just be going about your everyday life and left with nothing but the clothes on your back, homes ruined and everything. And there were examples in which, like, I think the iPad 2 was coming out the following weekend, and people were queuing up for that. But there were a lot of people that actually in the end didn't go out and buy an iPad 2. Instead, they decided to donate their money to people that the week before they wouldn't have known about. Actually, they wouldn't have even known when they donated the money. They wouldn't have cared about. It's the out of sight, out of mind mentality. And actually you have this empathetic connection. And so StickAid, the website that I did the live stream for, they did a special one for Japan. But within 24 hours of that occurring, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all social media went on fire. And this was in 2011, 2012. I'm sure we've all seen experiences over the past 4 years in which big events happen, and there's this sense of global unity. And this was something that we never really fully mastered with StickAid. And if we ever did it again, I'd like to focus more on this. And it's about completing the story. When the 24 hours was over, that would be the end of the show, and the live stream would end. We'd send a thank you email out and everything. But actually, what people like to see is, where is their money going to? Is there a follow-up you could do? Could you do videos showing you actually where the funds go to? People like to see tangible successes. People want to actually see the full story of what their efforts have contributed to. So the second one, mainstream media. My initial mainstream media experiences were quite frustrating, to say the least. I was always the sort of token YouTuber who went on to sort of, in layman's terms, explain what YouTube is, etc., to the media that thought it was just about dogs on skateboards and things like that. A cliche that still hasn't gone away completely. But what else I found really interesting was the fact that they were trying to tap into YouTube and this online community to leverage to traditional media, and it didn't always work. And so off the back of StickAid that I did, there was something in 2009 called BBC Upstaged, and it was run by the BBC, BBC Three and Endemol, who do Big Brother. And what they did was they set up 2 glass boxes in Bristol town centre, and the challenge was that you would go in one of these glass boxes. I know it sounds really appealing. And for 6 hours, you have to entertain the nation online, and you can rack up votes. but you'd be competing against another act in this other glass box, and whoever got the most votes at the end of the day would then go through to the next round, and the prize at the very end was £10,000. And I was up for doing it, but what I noticed very quickly was that the BBC and Endemol were contacting all my YouTube friends to get involved as well. And I thought, right, they're trying to divide and conquer, get us to put all our traffic across to their website and make us compete and knock each other out. So I said, let's all say we're going to do it, but let's do it as one team. And that's exactly what we did. And we went on there and we were against very traditional acts, people that were great musicians, people who were comedians, really great artists. But because it was a live stream, if you're watching someone play music, you know, song after song for 6 hours, there's nothing different from just watching it as a YouTube video. You know, the live element needs to add something. And so what we did over the 6 hours was in real time taking requests and doing the requests that were recommended by the online community. And therefore we had this really engaged audience. And I think we were beating most acts by 8 times the votes. And towards the end, Endemol were getting quite frustrated. They were trying to trip us up. They were trying to make us backstab other contestants, and it just got really dirty, which I really hated. It never got commissioned again, the show, I should probably say. But off the back of it, I did get to work with BBC Comedy Online for a bit, so some good did come out of it. But over the years with YouTube, my involvement and sort of relationship with mainstream media has been sort of to educate people about how the internet has given us an ability to be a global fact-checking organisation. There's a lot of news channels that are on YouTube now that when the mainstream media does a report that's not entirely factual, they can actually upload that online, give a commentary, and it's why there's a lot of distrust in the media. But saying that, there is also a lot of good with it. I mean, now I work for The Guardian. The reason I chose to work with them was off the back of the work they did with Edward Snowden and surveillance. I saw them as an organisation in that case that didn't just report the truth, it defended it. And so although alternative media is very powerful and is a lot more, has a lot more flexibility, big organisations like The Guardian do have a lot more resources behind them and can actually do much more in-depth reporting. And so there's a lot of rhetoric at the moment about it's just all mainstream media is BS, which isn't entirely true. There's a lot of issues with mainstream media that is also in alternate media, and so it's just looking at the ways that we can use the internet to better serve information. Healthcare. So this was a comment I got on a video that I posted in 2007. I had counselling for depression, and so I did a video where I just basically did a 10-minute talk straight down the camera, and I said that as someone who is probably redeemed as quite confident, I went through depression. It wasn't very nice, and actually it's not a weakness to admit that you've got issues and that there is help out there. You should look for friends and family. And this was one particular comment I had that said, it was actually the bit at the very end that said, I've done this week without my depressants medication for the first time ever. And that particular comment stood out to me on this video because what it showed to me was I was just a human being putting my story out there, and yet I was connecting with someone I'd never met before, and me just communicating my thoughts had that connection, and it gave them a positive experience. And there was a lot of people I've spoken to who'd been given medication as kind of a quick fix, and they realised that actually if we're just open with each other, it's not to say it's always the solution, but actually sharing experiences can be good for the human condition. And so this led me when I was at university. Unfortunately, it was too ambitious of a project for my third year doing psychology, but I tried researching it afterwards. I came up with something called expressive insight, which is using YouTube as a platform for dealing with mental health. And I'll just go through the 4 stages now quickly to show you. So my point was that if you're feeling really bad one day, you're feeling really low, what you should do, you should get a camera and set it up and press record and just unload your thoughts into it, just talk. Because actually a lot of the time we keep stuff uptight inside, and by expressing yourself, you're externalizing those inattentions, and by the end of your rant or whatever you want to call it, you might actually feel a lot better, and that's it. You can delete the video and not have to worry about it again. But for a lot of people, that may not be good enough. So the second stage is importing the footage. And so I suggest that people upload the footage onto a computer and they watch it back, because I'm sure many of you can remember maybe a time where you had a friend or family member in need, you gave them advice, and later down the line you may have had similar issues and you weren't able to take your own advice because with depression or feeling bad your head's in a cloud and it's very hard to look at things objectively. And so by uploading yourself onto a computer and watching it back, you're seeing yourself as a third person entity, and you actually might be able to pluck out things that you didn't see or when you're having your inner monologue with yourself. But again, you may not identify solutions, you may not benefit from that, and so I made a third stage. This was me ages ago pretending I was editing a video. Very convincing, I know. By editing the video, you are then actually analysing it in a lot more detail. So it might be cutting out the pauses, it might be cutting out the ums and ahs. It's as if you were going to make a video blog. And by doing that, you're looking at things in a lot more detail, and at the end of that, you may come to some solutions. However, you may not. And so the final stage is to broadcast yourself. And I did this on a couple of occasions, which is by uploading it online, and you expose yourself to communities in which that they can reach out and give advice and help you. But I'm sure there's a lot of gasps in the air, because there might be a problem with this. We're all very familiar with the internet and how brutal it can be. And it's the fact that there are people that will say absolutely horrendous things. I've known people who have been on the edge and have had the most disgusting stuff thrown at them by anonymous people behind the cyber screen. And it is a real issue. And so the solution I came up with, and it was something a project I never got to fully commit to, was Expressive Insight, which was you would set up a website. It's like an enclosed forum, and people could sign up. And when people sign up, they would do a psychiatric test that would basically look to find out if they're a severe case or not. And if they're a severe case, there would be professionals that could step in and offer the advice that they would need. If they did have depression, but it wasn't seen as a severe case, then they could join this enclosed forum that was overseen by professionals in the field. And my belief and my hypothesis, and again, this would have to be, of course, thoroughly tested before put fully into practice, is that my belief is that by people sharing personal experiences, I mean, I've gone through counselling myself, I'm sure we all have, in some form or another, or a relative of ours has, it can be helpful, but actually sharing experiences where people have lived with it themselves can be really beneficial. And what I'd like to think would happen is if people did get out of a rut, is that they would then want to stay on that community and then share their experiences with other people. Just checking the time, cool. The next is government. So in 2008, good old Gordon Brown did a campaign called Ask the PM, where he asked YouTubers to pose questions and he would answer them. I'm just going to give you the short story. It wasn't convincing. He didn't really answer the question, and it probably made me a bit more apathetic towards politicians. But I did really see something in this, which was the fact that people in the political establishment did see there was a case to be made with engaging with the general public through online platforms like YouTube, this audience-facing platform. And actually, to his credit, he gave it a go. So after that, I had some conversations with the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. I helped out with particular campaigns there. Even more recently, with my activism on surveillance, I helped, or I should say challenged Labour with their youth manifesto, because I felt they're not doing enough to challenge the mass surveillance state at the moment. But the point is that people in power are using YouTube and do realise that it's not good enough anymore just sort of using broadcast television and speaking at people. Actually, the internet is a great way to have dialogue, and you can look in the States with people like Barack Obama who do Q&As and things like that. These last couple of sections are just a bit quick because I touch upon them again in a moment. Education. So when I was at university, I helped out with the blending learning. I did a blending learning conference. And what I'd seen through YouTube is, I think Stanford University, they had a human behaviour lecture, all 12, up on YouTube. I was able to sort of do a module in a degree for free, at home. It was just mind-blowing to me. Really sort of brings up the questions of what is the price of education. Does the digital age really fit in with the way that economics work and the way things are at the moment? But the other thing I realised was that I struggled with education. I really messed up my A-levels. I luckily did a bit better at university, but I always felt I was better at doing things on video. Some people were better at writing. But the thing is, we have this education machine where you do a massive course, however many weeks it is, and then at the end in the exam, you have 2 hours to regurgitate as much of that on paper, and in that moment, that could define you for the rest of your life. This is a thing I'm sure we've all had discussions about. And so what I propose with blended learning is, are there ways that in the education system we can say, it's actually about getting the best out of people? If they have a potential, they could be someone who has the potential to have a genius idea in the future, but could be condemned for the rest of their life because they can't write it down. So are there ways that we could actually test people through podcasting, audio? Is it by doing coursework? Is it by doing videos? Or, doing written if they want to? And actually this talk back in 2012 I did, and I found it really interesting because I actually pitched this out on my YouTube channel, and I said, if anyone is at school or university and would like me to come and speak, I will come do it. And I had a lot of responses, which was really cool. And what I found really interesting was I went to some universities, had really great conversations, but one place I went to in particular was a primary school. And I turned up not really appreciating how young the kids were. And especially when we get to some bits in a moment which are very anti-establishment. And obviously I went quite a lot into the education system. The headmaster had invited me. And I had a really open conversation. I just thought, I'm just going to go for it. And the headmaster was really open arms about it. And it's this cliche you hear again and again, but when you're actually in the moment, you really notice it. These kids at this age were like, they had so much curiosity, and they really weren't, they didn't have boundaries. They were really interested about the technology, and they were having really interesting suggestions of how we can use YouTube and the online platforms to really make the world a better place. And I just brought that up because I found that really inspiring. The final one on the list is activism. And when I started YouTube, I was very much into comedy and doing entertainment because it was just the thing that was done a lot back then. It still is now. But as I became more educated about the ways that YouTube can be used and the online communities, like for charity and healthcare and all that, as you can probably guess, I got a bit more serious. I was like, it's much better to invest my time in these projects. And so I got involved with things like the Zeitgeist movement, Occupy Wall Street. Although I wasn't over there, I was able to help out with their live streams while there were protests going on in New York. In the bottom left corner, it was when there were protests a few years ago in Turkey. The government shut down the internet, and I just did a video saying, this is what you need to know, this is how the protesters have been treated. And via Twitter and on YouTube, I was having conversations with people on the ground, and I made lots of friends with people in Turkey. And it was just a really eye-opening experience now of this global world and the fact that we can see commonalities. Yes, there is a language barrier, but technology is fixing that very quickly. So just to quickly explain, on YouTube with closed captions, there's something you can do where you can take your video and you get a caption box on the right of it. And what you do is the video starts playing and you start typing what you've just heard yourself say. So you start typing the transcript. And as you type, it pauses the video. So you type what you've just heard, you stop typing, it continues playing. And then you start typing the next bit, it pauses it. And it takes a while, but you type it all out, you click a button that says sync, it will then sync what you've typed with the audio of the video all the way throughout, and then it's translatable into over 100 languages. So I quite often do videos about global issues, and I have people saying, I kind of understand, it's not my first language, could you translate it so I can share it with my friends? Like, when we're breaking down the boundaries of language with the internet, there's actually only one language you're left with, which is like the human condition, which I keep bringing up again and again. I'm very mindful of time. I'm going to have to rush through this last bit. So over the years, I've been able to work on so many different projects, whether it's working with Ricky Gervais and starting his David Brent guitar channel, working with the BBC, Channel Flip was a YouTube network. I now work at The Guardian. Wallace and Gromit were a bit of a laugh. And I just realised that there is such diversity online, but there are commonalities. The reason I always have loved online video is it doesn't matter if you're a philosopher, if you're a musician, if you're into doing art, or you're a journalist. You can actually use any of these things in any combination. And when I've gone to YouTube gatherings around the world, I organised the first in the UK in 2006. There's a commonality, which is we all just want to share our experiences, and I've always had amazing times doing that. So I'm going to rush through this very last segment. So the Universal Solutions Project was something that I designed, which came out through my activism and everything I've talked about so far. And it was a project that I thought, there is so many stories to tell out there. There are global issues that we are facing, and we are living through very disruptive times. And I thought, what is the best way to combat that? And so the objective I came up with was to create an online database that empowers people to discover solutions to any problem that currently exists on the planet today. And so I looked at what the underlying principles were of education and awareness. And so I looked back at education. Now, when we look at a YouTube video, someone who tweets something, any exchange of information, we've got to look at like what is the purpose of it and how do we get the most out of it. So when I look at the education system, and it's not just about the transfer of information, it's about actually inspiring the students to question and learn more. It's about creating curiosity. I'm sure there are loads of things you've seen online, an issue that comes up that you haven't really thought about before, and then it becomes a train of thought where you click on another link and then another link. The amount of evenings I've had where I'm going to watch one video before I go to bed, and then it ends up being hours of time gone of watching lots of different things. And it's also the fact that I think it's the possibility to become disciplined in a broad range of subjects. So something I've really pushed forward the last few years is that I think we have a responsibility as individuals to become our own journalists. And I definitely brought this up when Occupy Wall Street was happening, and a lot of people said, I don't have time. But look how far we've come. Before the internet, you would come home at the end of the day, you would turn on the 6, 7 o'clock news, and you would get the headlines, and that was it. Okay, I'm up to date. Now, you're a bit more cynical about what is given through broadcast media. And so we're actually forced into this position where we do have to fact check. You may share a video that you've seen online that you think people want to see, or a meme or something, and one of your friends may go, wait a minute, that's not exactly true, and they might link something that actually proves it's not the case. And you might feel a bit stupid. I've done it myself, I still do it now occasionally, and you think, okay, I'll be more careful next time. And that, in its essence, is actually making us all as individuals become our own journalists and become better critical thinkers. So I came up with this, which for me is how global empathy comes about, and it's the fact that you might become curious and aware of a particular issue. You then want to learn more information about it, and then when you learn more information, you become aware about other issues, and it just becomes an endless cycle of just more curiosity, more information, and you have more conversations with friends, and I think that's journeys that we're all on at the moment. An argument I always get into with my mum is whether or not ignorance is bliss. My mum has always been very terrified, especially when I got into activism. She'd say I've joined cults and things like that. She goes, I just want you to be happy. I just want you to enjoy your life. Isn't it better not to know about all the horrible stuff out there? And the point I always made was, okay, Mum, but if there is something that's going to burst your bubble, I want to know what that is so I can protect you. And so the metaphor I always used was that, let's say you lived in a village in the middle of a forest, and you had like a watchtower that could look out to the horizons. If there was a forest fire out there, I would every day want to go up there to find out when is it going to come and hit the village, Or you could be bliss, ignorance is bliss, and just stay and get on with it. And eventually it's going to hit you. And for me, I feel like there are some real threats on the horizon as establishments get challenged by the democratization of the internet. And I think that we all have a duty to educate ourselves so that if things get bad, I think that sounds a bit more hopeful, if things get bad, that we can be ready for it. And so these were the 3 stages of the USP. I'll only be a couple more minutes, by the way. The first was to create an information database. The second is to enable audience acquisition. And the third is to create tools for spreading awareness. So the idea I had was to create a Wikipedia-style site, and every page would start with a heading, which is a question about an issue in the world. Why is there homelessness? Why do people die in car crashes? Why is there income inequality? All these sort of things. And then underneath it, you would have a small paragraph which would explain the root cause of the problem. Think of everything that we discuss in society when governments put forward legislation. For me, when a law is put forward, it is an admittance that they have failed to deal with the problem in the first place. So let's look at speed cameras. Why don't they just stop cars from being able to travel that fast? That's a quick example. It's even looking at problems like, with car crashes on the road. Why don't they put abrasive in the road that can absorb the water so cars don't skid off the road? Automated transport, these are all things that we're looking at. And I'm sure already there is some curiosity if I just mention a couple of those issues. And then underneath that paragraph, you would then have some further explanations of the solutions in more detail, and there would be links. So if people were actually curious, they could click through and learn more about the technologies and the potential solutions. The idea is that this site would be open source because no one has a monopoly on good ideas, no one has a monopoly on information, and hopefully over time it would build up more and more. The second stage was audience acquisition, something that a lot of us do in marketing. There are a lot of great charities and activist groups in the world, and a lot of them aren't able to work together maybe as much as they would like to. And so I saw this website as an opportunity to get them to work together indirectly. So I was able to go to different charity groups and go, look at this website, look at this page. Is there anything missing there? And they would go, actually, yeah, these are other solutions, or these are problems you haven't looked at. And it was a way to get all charities and activist organisations all around the world to take a look at problems and solutions. And then the third was to create tools for spreading awareness. So it was effectively an app. And this only went through the pilot stage. Unfortunately, we weren't able to take this to its, we weren't able to scale it up, but you could go to a protest maybe, and via Bluetooth, you could send out, information on the issues with solutions. Or a test that I did was I would go on the street and I spoke to either people that were homeless, I spoke to businessmen, I spoke to politicians, teachers, people from all walks of life. And the question I asked them is, what matters to you? And when I asked that, I saw something in their eyes light up. Because normally when it's charity, it's, would you like to invest in this cause? But of course, we all have hierarchies of what matters to us. We may have lost someone to cancer, so we'd be more willing to donate to that. We may have other experiences that would make us donate to another charity. But when you ask someone what matters to you, they really start thinking about things. And again, they may suggest solutions and problems you've never considered before. And actually, I had the most amazing conversations with people from all walks of life. And so when we looked at all these things I spoke at the beginning with what YouTube made me think about, it was the fact that with charity, it was a way to bring all charities together. With the media, it was a way to have a global fact-checking organisation. I've been following the US presidential or Democratic presidential nomination events at the moment. Bernie Sanders, who is taking on Hillary Clinton. It's really interesting. This is a guy that for 40 years has been under the radar. He hasn't been in the mainstream, but now he has a digital footprint, and people are sharing videos saying, look at the past 40 years, how consistent he was compared to Hillary Clinton, who every election cycle has changed her position on different things. So when they're having debates, people aren't just looking at the news to see the pundits say, here are the slogans of tonight. They're actually fact-checking on Twitter in real time and on YouTube, and I find that really interesting. Healthcare, I've already talked about mental health. Government, I think this is going to create a lot of disruption for governments at the moment. There's going to be a lot more accountability. Education, as I've said, I think there's a real opportunity for everyone to have the ability to be educated regardless of what their incomes are, because information is free when it's online. And activism. People all over the world, the Turkey example I gave, there are so many protests going on at the moment, but organisation is being able to be facilitated through the internet, which I find really, really inspiring. So the final slide I had was of the Earth. I just thought I'd have something quite symbolic at the end. But for me, I see the world as a network of dots. Like every human being, every idea, every emotion is a dot. And we are living in a time where we have the tool of the internet, which is decentralizing control of ideas and empowering individuals to go about their life using them how they wish. And so I see the internet as connecting these dots together. And what I believe is going to happen, and the trends I've seen from YouTube the past 10 years, is that these dots are going to become they're going to group into clouds. So different ideologies, different belief systems. Some people believe in climate change, some people don't. And it's why you're actually seeing a lot of aggression online. People are getting into their camps on different issues and are becoming quite aggressive. And I think that there is a real information war that we're going into now. But my hope And what I have seen, there is some optimism that I think people in some areas are realising this is such a waste of time, just like throwing abuse at each other. And you find that actually people start having more intellectual conversations. And I've seen people from two sides of the argument switch to each other. I'm just really hopeful that I think the internet is really joining the dots together. And my experience with YouTube the last 10 years is going to be such a small dot in the grand scheme of what the internet has to offer. But the fact that we've been able to change the lives of people with mental health, with charity, with government, with education, like, you know, the foundations of what makes civilized societies, it's why I have become a bit of a hippie with YouTube, because I've seen it can change the world, and I hope that other people see that too so they can do the same. And that's it. Thank you very much.